For the first time, the Palm Springs Unified School District will be hosting an Equity Community Conference. The virtual conference is free and open to everyone and will be held tomorrow, featuring an array of topics and speakers. I spoke today with the district's Family Engagement Coordinator, Ruby Rivera. Ruby, first off, let me ask you, what is the Equity Conference and why do you think it was needed?
So our Equity Community Conference is being held for the first time in Palm Springs Unified School District because we think it's really important to have these conversations, not only with our teachers and our staff, which has been ongoing, but also with our community members and our families and our students. So this conference is an opportunity for all of our stakeholders in the community, staff, parents, teachers to come together, listen, and learn. Nobody is saying that they're the expert of equity in the equity conference, but everybody has a perspective to share some unique experiences, some within our school district, our staff, and it'll be an opportunity for people to hear about some topics that we don't normally talk about on an everyday basis.
So, for example, what are some of the topics that you'll be discussing? Is it just race? Is it sexuality? Tell us about some of the things you're looking at.
Now, when we talk about equity, it does seem like our mind goes to racial inequities, and that's a big issue in our country, especially, but we are addressing a number of inequities during this conference, and we do that on a regular basis when we're talking about educational goals and programs for the school district. So for this conference in particular, we're going to address these concepts of inequity in some general sessions, and then there's some that are very specific to certain groups. So to give you an example of one of the sessions that's very general, the topic is the attributes of colorism. Colorism is a term that I don't think a lot of people are familiar with, but it affects different cultures, not just in the United States, but worldwide. And it's a concept that means basically certain skin colors are treated differently, and in some cultures favored. And that extends to not just our social interaction with each other, but sometimes to systemic systems. And so just having the conversation about it, even though we might know it exists in the back of our minds, talking about how it has really impacted us as a society, I think will go a long way. So that's an example of a session that'll impact a variety of groups. And then one that's very specific to a certain group is let's say our LGBTQ, understanding your rights, helping our students understand what their rights are in school specifically. That's a session that'll be targeting one specific group of students that have faced some inequities in school.
Yeah, this is certainly a very complicated issue.
It is.
And it's important to mention that equity does not mean equal.
That is a very important distinction to make. I think a lot of people, they're similar in wording. They go there, and well-meaning, they think that equity means give everybody the exact same thing, and that will make things fair. But in reality, we know that in our country, and it extends to our school systems, we've had a history of underrepresentation for certain groups, and for some systemic oppression of groups for generations. And so that's created some inequities that have to be intentionally addressed. So giving everyone the same thing is not what everyone needs. And what equity means, this is to flip the other side, doesn't mean that we're taking away from any group. It means that we're giving more and specific needs for groups that haven't been represented or that have been marginalized, and we're bringing them to the table. We want to be inclusive, and we want to make sure that everybody's voice is heard.
I'm curious, have you gotten any pushback about this conference?
That's a good question. So that's to address it. Sometimes we do get questioned when we start, groups, committees that are intended to support a specific group. And I think as soon as people hear about the rationale behind it, about the need behind it, then people will come around to understanding. And so locally, no, I'm really fortunate to say we haven't had any big pushback. People do have questions, and that's understandable. And that's what the point of this is so we can have those conversations. And people who are willing to learn more, that's what we're looking for. So whether you've already carried an equity lens for a long time, or you're just now coming around to thinking about it, everyone's welcome because we want to have these conversations.
All right. Well, Ruby, we certainly appreciate your time. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.